revealed. The sinister secrets of America's haunted communities and their deformed offspring. When Sarah pulled into the driveway of their new home in Willow Creek, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The quaint streets lined with old maples had a stillness that felt unsettling, almost as if the town itself were holding its breath. As her daughter Emily giggled in the back seat, Sarah's heart raced, but she brushed it off. This, she thought, was a fresh start away from the chaos of the city. However, the second night, that calm shattered. From somewhere deep in the woods, eerie cries echoed through the night like kids laughing just out of sight. Only there was something wrong with those laughs. They pierced Sarah's dreams, fluttering whispers merging into a dissonant harmony that made her skin crawl. She awoke in a cold sweat, the shadows of her room feeling deeper, darker, as if something lurked just outside the reach of her lamp's glow. The neighbors had been polite yet distant. At first, their warm smiles seemed inviting, but the way they glanced at one another when Sarah passed by sent shivers up her spine. Children played outside, but their laughter had an unsettling edge. Their wide eyes looked almost unnatural. Sarah shook her head, blaming fatigue and stress. Just settling in, surely? But when Emily began sleepwalking toward the woods in the dead of night, every rational explanation vanished beneath the weight of raw fear. One night, after tucking Emily in tight, Sarah found herself drawn outside for a midnight run to the diner. The streets, now pregnant with a heavy silence, vibrated with a tension that set her on edge. Shadows tangled in the branches, flitting between her and the moonlight. Goosebumps erupted on her arms as she told herself it was just the cold. But the whispers grew louder, tugging insistently at her mind as she rushed toward the diner. A man approached, an older gentleman, gray hair tousled, eyes bright with a feverish gleam. He spoke of Willow Creek's past, detailing tales of unspeakable horrors, of remnants of a curse that had long shadowed the town. Every 20 years, he warned, eyes darting to the late-night sky, the children, they vanish. It's almost time. The chill that gripped Sarah's heart came crashing in waves. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Distrust gripped Sarah as she brushed off the warnings of the police, who dismissed her as paranoid. They couldn't see what she felt, the dark shadows creeping around the edges of her sanity, that suffocating feeling that clung to her every waking moment. As her daughter's sporadic trips toward the woods turned into nightly rituals, the cries pulsed through Sarah's veins, manifesting into a living nightmare. Then came the night when she caught sight of Emily outside, standing in the moonlight with other children, faces twisted in eerie smiles. They formed a circle in the clearing, chanting words that sent ice through her veins. The cries turned into distorted chants, and as Sarah stumbled closer, a horror dawned upon her. These children were part of something monstrous, binding them to the forest in a legacy of darkness. Time was running out. How could she save Emily from a fate entwined in such grotesque tradition? As shadows stretched towards her, Sarah braced herself. The price of their new beginning was steep. Would she be just another lost whisper in the dark? The ground felt pulsing and alive beneath Sarah's feet as she stumbled through the underbrush, the chant growing more distinct like a heartbeat echoing in her ears. Emily's laughter twisted in the night air, bubbling with a feral energy that frightened her to her core. There was something primordial about it, something that wrapped around her spine in a vice grip of dread. "Emily!" she cried, her voice breaking. Panic clawed at her throat as the circle of children turned, their eyes glinting in the darkness, void of warmth or innocence. They resembled figures from a twisted fairy tale, grotesque and alien. In the center stood Emily, oblivious to her mother's fear, her small hands swaying rhythmically. "Mommy, come join us." Emily's voice was sweet, but it twisted, contorted as it danced into the shadows. "It's so fun here. She put her hands out, beckoning for Sarah to step forward, to join the chaos swirling around her. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribcage. She took a step back, fighting against the magnetic pull of those otherworldly children. What had happened to them? Each face, once familiar, now wore an unsettling grin that seemed all too knowing. She remembered the man's haunted words, "The children vanish." Could they already be gone? Ripping her gaze from Emily, she scanned the treeline, searching for a way to pull her daughter back from this nightmare. But where were the shadows coming from? Where was the source of the chance? It felt as if the very trees were alive, watching, waiting, and then she noticed a glimmer deep within the woods, a sinister shimmer amongst the thick bark, as if something or someone was feeding off the chaos, feeding off the children's laughter. The leaves rustled around them, whispering secrets that sent prickles of fear racing down her neck. "Emily, please!" The desperation in her voice echoed as she stepped closer, pushing through the thick bramble. "We need to go home." The chanting halted abruptly. A suffocating silence enveloped the clearing, the sudden drop in sound making her stomach twist. Emily turned slowly, her eyes wide and unblinking, as though something unseen held her gaze. But just as quickly as the silence fell, it shattered into a cacophony. Laughter burst forth, a discordant melody intertwining with the startled barks and howls from the woods. The children resumed their circling, their bodies moving faster, more erratic, as if a force beyond their control was driving them. Emily stood still, an anchor in a storm. Sarah lunged forward, fueled by raw instinct. She couldn't let her little girl slip away. But the instant her fingers brushed Emily's shoulder, a powerful force jolted through her. A shockwave of energy that subdued her lungs, froze her limbs. The children began to disperse, forming a wall between her and Emily. Each face turned to her grinning, mocking, empty. "Mommy is scared." One child sang, the words dripping with malice. Another chimed in, "We can keep her forever." Panic surged as Sarah's mind raced. This was no innocent game. This was a dark reckoning, woven into the very fabric of Willow Creek. She was no longer just a mom trying to save her daughter. She was fighting against something ancient, something vile that thrived on fear. Tears welled in her eyes, desperation turning into a breaking point. What would become of her? Was Emily too far gone? As darkness curled around the edges of her vision, she realized something crucial. She needed to break the cycle. She had to act now before it was too late. But what would that cost her? The children swayed in unison now, their faces fading into the shadows. The woods around them seemed to quake, waiting for her next move. And in that moment, as the forest whispered her name, Sarah knew this wasn't over. The true nightmare was just beginning. Now she had to find a way to reclaim Emily before they were both lost to the spiraling abyss of the cursed woods. What price would she pay to confront the darkness? Standing on the precipice of fate, she took a breath and prepared to step forward into hell. Would she dare to uncover the dark truth binding them to Willow Creek? The earth beneath Sarah's feet trembled as she felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing in on her. She had to fight through the swirling chaos, through the mocking laughter that echoed like shards of glass in her mind. Emily's voice lingered, strangely alluring and taunting. "It's so fun here," floated through the shifting shadows, thick with malevolence. Terror coursed through her veins. Stars blinked overhead, each pulse of light offering false hope. But how could she hope against the encroaching darkness? The circle of children parted, allowing Sarah a glimpse of her daughter standing frozen as though caught in a spell. Her skin tingled. Every instinct screamed for her to run. Yet she couldn't abandon Emily. "Please, Emily," she called again, her heart racing wildly. For a moment, the child's gaze wavered. An echo of recognition flashed across her face. But it melted away, replaced by that otherworldly emptiness. The sinister force around them pulsed, saturating the air with dread and a sweet coppery scent. Suddenly, the laughter stopped once more, replaced by whispers. The woodlands seemed to groan under the weight of old secrets, ancient curses waiting to reclaim what was theirs. Words scraped together like bones on stones. Sarah strained to listen, desperate for meaning amidst the chaos. "Join us forever." The words crawled under her skin, bubbling with a wicked promise that sent icy fingers down her spine. Instinctively, she pressed her palm against her chest, feeling its frantic beat. She had to break the spell. She had to reach Emily, to pull her free of whatever held her so firmly in its grasp. With a deep breath, Sarah steadied herself, heart hammering like a prisoner seeking escape. She pushed through the crowd of children, their laughter ringing louder, more frantic, their faces flickering under the starlight. Each step felt heavier, like wading through molasses thick with dread. The shadows danced around her, stretching out fingers that reached for her legs, pulling, tugging, an insistent reminder of the horror that lay just beyond her grasp as she reached Emily. The walls of children loomed back, closing in impossibly fast. Sarah grabbed Emily's shoulders, her fingers digging in with fierce determination. "Emily, listen to me. You have to come back. We can't stay here." Those wide eyes blinked, flickering like candle flames, fighting against the darkness that threatened to snuff them out. A moment of clarity seemed to wash over Emily. "Mommy, what's wrong?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Relief surged through Sarah, but it was short-lived. Just as Emily's gaze flickered with recognition, the other children flared into a frenzy, giggling wildly as if mocking the moment of lucidity. The air thickened with a pulse that felt like a heartbeat. The forest was alive, feeding off their fear, relishing the chaos. "Run!" Sarah shouted, pulling at Emily with everything she had. But the pull of the circle was powerful, a dark gravity holding them in place. She felt those familiar, searching hands grip her legs with an icy hold that could not be broken. She twisted in agony, trying to find a way out of their grasp. Then, there it was again, the shimmer behind the trees. Something beckoned from the shadows, whispering secrets she dared not understand. Was it the source of the terror? What if it held the key to saving her daughter? "Trust me, Emily," she shouted, determination flooding her voice, louder than the sinister laughter. "We don't belong to them." The children's eyes momentarily flickered, that emptiness wavering. Then suddenly, a great howl erupted from the woods, a primal sound that shook the ground and the forest plunged into darkness. In that moment, clarity returned like a sickly sweet taste in her mouth. She had to confront whatever lurked within that shimmering veil. But was Emily still with her? Or had she already begun to slip into the darkness? As Sarah tore her gaze from the children, fear wedged its cold fingers around her heart. With a swift decision born of love and desperation, she steeled herself, ready to plunge into the depths of whatever horror awaited. Could she rescue Emily? Would she be able to face whatever terrible truth awaited in the shadows? The woods trembled, alive with sinister intent, and Sarah felt the creeping edge of despair close in. With one last breath, she stepped into the void, searching for her daughter and the terrible truth hidden behind the glimmer in the trees. Would she make it out before the darkness consumed them both? The light from the stars vanished as Sarah stepped deeper into the void. A thick mist enveloped her, coiling around her like the arms of the lost. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of voices, some pleading and others shrieking, as if trapped in eternal torment. She strained to catch a glimpse of Emily, her heart battered by desperation. "Emily!" she cried, her voice raw with fear. The mist swallowed her scream, twisting it into an echo that faded into the darkness. It felt as if the shadows relished her anguish, feeding off her every word. The air grew heavier, the sweetness of copper thickening until it was overwhelming, like a noxious gas swirling around her. With shaking hands, Sarah fumbled ahead, searching for anything familiar amidst the dread. Shapes emerged from the shadows, shrouded in darkness but impossibly close. Eyes, too many eyes, glinted back at her with a feral hunger, a desperate thirst as if they were living, breathing creatures. She hadn't crossed into another realm. She had stumbled into the depths of the unspeakable. "Where are you?" she choked out, every instinct urging her to turn and flee. But she wouldn't abandon Emily, no matter the cost. Glimmers of light flickered in the void, connected by tendrils of shadow, moving as if alive. She reached out instinctively, her fingers meeting the cool surface of something firm. A cold wall, perhaps? It pulsed beneath her touch, and she recoiled as it shrieked a sound like nails against glass. "Mommy," that small voice, faint yet achingly close, burst through the chaos. "Emily!" As hope ignited within her, so did the shadows, twisting into grotesque forms. Sarah stumbled forward, battling both the walls encroaching around her and the primordial dread clawing at her mind. "Emily! I'm coming!" The laughter warped around her, a twisted hymn of chaos dancing with malevolence. Shadows twisted, weaving through the darkness like serpents, hungry for their next meal. Behind her, a ghastly howl echoed, chilling her bones as it reverberated through the night air, hinting of something much worse than the children, something that lay beyond. "Mommy, don't leave me." The cry was louder this time, closer. Sarah's pulse quickened, and she pressed her fingers against the wall, feeling her way through the suffocating haze. The walls pulsed, rhythmically as if it were alive, and each beat sent a shiver up her spine. She could sense something big just beyond the reach of her understanding, a presence that hungered, shifted, and fed on her terror. What is it? She could almost feel it watching her. Or was it just a little more? She urged herself, forcing her trembling legs to carry her onward. The dark shapes danced on the edges of her vision, swirling in an unpredictable rhythm, and she could hear something, an unmistakable whisper. "Stay with us, leave me alone." Sarah shouted defiantly, her voice breaking over the din. She needed to carve a path through this horror and reach her daughter before whatever sinister force behind those whispers manifested. Suddenly, the children burst forth from the shadows, their faces contorted with glee, their laughter rising to a fever pitch. They surrounded her, closing in as she fought to hold her ground. Each step back felt like betrayal, a slip into the crushing grasp of darkness. "Emily!" she cried, her breath ragged with panic. "Fight it, please." But the laughter drowned out her pleas, echoing around her until it morphed into something deeper, darker, a sound she had never heard before, filled with the echoes of forgotten souls. Then, amidst the chaos, a shiver ran through the ground. It shook beneath her feet, and wisps of light shot up through the darkness. For a moment, silence fell, and Sarah held her breath, awaiting whatever came next. The children turned their heads, glancing back into the depths of the mist. A figure began to shift from shadows, a silhouette outlined by an eerie glow. What emerged could only be described as a grotesque mockery of a once human form, a being mistaken for a child, yet twisted in a way that made Sarah's stomach churn. And then it spoke, voice echoing through the woods as if it were 100 voices at once. "Join us and you will know your fate." A cold dread swept over her. She hadn't just entered a nightmare. She had stumbled into something far darker than she could comprehend. The figure stretched out its arms. It beckoned, and Sarah realized with a jolt this was not just about saving Emily anymore. "Stay with me, Emily," she yelled desperately, feeling the pull of the darkness tightening around them as time slipped away. What was this dark creature's plan for them both? Sarah stood frozen, caught between the desperate love for her daughter and the chilling reality of the malevolent force that desired her soul. Could she stand firm against this horror, or was it already too late? Would she and Emily be lost in the shadows forever? The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, sending an icy wave of fear coiling around Sarah's heart. Thick shadows writhed at its feet, dancing in sync with its every movement. The laughter of the children melded into a hypnotic chant, their voices rising and falling like the tide, each wave crashing against her resolve. "Mommy, help me." Emily's voice sliced through the chaos like a knife, a beacon of hope in a storm of horror. "Stay away from her," Sarah screamed, her voice cracking as she pushed against the throng of twisted children. Desperation surged within her. She needed to protect Emily, to shield her from whatever dark intentions lurked in the shape before them. But the children closed in, their eyes glinting with a manic delight, their fingertips brushing against her skin, a cold caress that sent goosebumps rippling through her. They whispered, "Join us. Play with us. Forever her heart raced, pumping dread through her veins. She took a hesitant step back, but the ground trembled beneath her, as if the very earth itself was conspiring to ensnare her. "Emily!" she shouted, twisting to catch a glimpse of her daughter, but the mist consumed every detail in a suffocating fog. Suddenly, the laughter shifted into cruel mockery, echoing deep in her mind. An unrelenting sensation clawed at her chest, the feeling of being watched, a horrific weight pressing down on her soul as if the shadows breathed alongside her. "You hear them, don't you? They want to play," the figure crooned, voice slithering through her thoughts like a snake. "No," Sarah screamed. "I won't let you take her." With determined fury, she lunged forward, pushing through the mass of wailing children. The fabric of the mist twisted, shrieking in response, as if her very action had awakened a slumbering monster. The walls of dark pulsated violently, thrumming with energy that made her teeth chatter. "Mommy!" Emily's voice was piercing now, cold like ice. I'm scared, hold on." Sarah pressed deeper, fighting against the panic rising in her throat. Just ahead, she thought she saw a flicker of hope in the abyss that could lead her back to her daughter. But the grotesque figure stepped closer, filling her vision with its contorted face. The laughter of the children morphed into an insidious symphony, each note drumming louder, crushing her resolve, spreading like weeds in her mind. "Your fate lies with us, Sarah," it sang, stretching its arms wide. "We can be together, forever." Dark tendrils snaked towards her, and she felt them wrap around her ankles, pulling her into the depths of despair. The weight of despair threatened to overpower her, and her mind flickered images of what lurked within their shadows, lost souls, twisted and broken, remnants of the abandoned. "Emily!" she cried one last time, voice choked with terror. And then silence. An overwhelming quiet fell, the cacophony of distorted laughter ceased, leaving only the pounding of her heart. She strained to hear anything, her breath heavy with dread that suffocated her. Perhaps that gentle warmth of light was more than just a figment of her hope. But she couldn't move. The shadows held her immobile, their grip tightening with each desperate beat of her heart. And then, in that silence, a whisper brushed her ear like a ghostly caress. "You want to save her? Then you must choose." What choice? Panic flooded her. She couldn't think. What would it mean to choose? In the suffocating quiet, as the mist curled around her like a predator preparing to strike, Sarah understood the dreadful truth. Every child's laughter, every severed scream of the lost souls echoed the same answer. With one heart-stopping moment, she grasped her fate. And there, in the depths of that darkness, something stirred. "Join us," it beckoned, 1,000 voices merging into one, thrumming with avarice. "Choose." The word echoed ominously. Sarah knew the answer would alter everything. What price would she pay to save Emily? The answer loomed, dark and unforgiving, in a world that thrived on torment. And the shadows twitched, ready to reveal what lay hidden in the blackness. Could she find the strength to confront the darkness and make the choice that lay before her? Or would she become yet another lost soul in this nightmare? The shadows writhed around Sarah like hungry serpents, their whispers curling around her thoughts, seeping into her mind. "You want to save her." A soundless beckon lingered, dripping with temptation. The darkness pressed closer, roughening her breath as she fought the growing dread. Her heart raced. What did it mean to choose? With her body frozen, instinct clawed at her, demanding she act, fight, or flee. But the choice lay ahead, tangled in the lingering obscurities that loomed like a dense fog. The echo of Emily's voice pulled at her sanity, a lifeline drowning among the drowning shouts of lost voices. "Mommy!" The call rang again, desperate, small, each syllable spinning through the air like a fading wisp of hope. "Emily!" The word tore from her throat, raw and aching. She felt the shadows sink deeper into her, hunger rising within her bones. Each pulse of darkness whispered promises of security. Embrace the darkness and gain power. But protectiveness ignited her spirit. She could not be tempted, not now. She needed to pierce through the veil, to uncover what was held hostage between those sinister tendrils. She opened her mouth to scream, to resist their poison, but darkness echoed back, enveloping her words, and they were swallowed whole, with a surge of primal energy. Sarah fought against the bindings of the shadows. She forced her limbs to move, the struggle making her muscles scream in protest. She pushed through the swarm of children, their laughter morphing into a nightmarish symphony of alternating screams and manic cackles. They closed in, the cold air thickening around her until the atmosphere felt as solid as stone as she pressed forward. The figure shifted, its face contorting, timeless agony stretched across its features. "Your choice, Sarah," it intoned, a guttural symphony laced with commands she didn't want to acknowledge. "What will you sacrifice?" In that moment, Sarah glimpsed a flicker of something within the swirling fog. It was a child, a small figure beyond the veil of noise, desperately reaching for her. Emily, her sweet girl, trapped in a web spun from despair. "Join us," the figure sang, the incantation filling the air, pulling at the edges of her resolve. "No," Sarah roared, defiance igniting like a wildfire within her chest. She charged forward, driven by instinct, by the love that surged, bright and fierce. A sudden clarity struck her. She needed to decide not for herself, but for Emily. The whispers drowned in the turmoil of her instincts, chaotic yet resolute. She plunged into the mist, hands outstretched, calling through the dense shroud. "Emily, sweetheart." The warmth of her motherly love infused the air, a beacon shining through the darkest corners. Just then, she felt a tug, small and familiar, a hand grasping hers. She turned, heart soaring, but the child before her morphed. A sudden shift that chilled her to her core. It was not Emily. The familiar features twisted into a ghastly grin, mocking her. "You aren't ready," it hissed, luring her into its nightmarish presence with a coaxing pull. A sudden chill wrapped around her spine, and Sarah recoiled, wrenching her hand free. Her heart thundered as the child's voice faded into hollow laughter. She was losing control. In that moment of confusion, a realization struck her. The darkness wanted her to choose to abandon her fight, to submit, to join the forsaken souls and let them claim her daughter's essence. Gripping her ragged breath, she steadied herself, praying for the courage to make a choice that might save them both. "Emily," Sarah called again, pouring every ounce of determination into that cry, hoping, praying it would reach her lost child. What lay ahead was still obscure, but every second ticking away measured the stakes of her choice. Could she break the cycle, resist the siren call of the abyss? Time halted as darkness shifted, revealing deeper secrets intertwined with sacrifice. "Choose," it breathed again, every syllable thudding like a drumbeat of doom. Desperate, she realized maybe the answer was not as simple as joining or leaving. Would she dare confront the darkness and bring forth something even more horrific? Would she risk everything for Emily? Before her, ancient eyes glinted, waiting, and with a breath steeped in dread, Sarah stepped forward, ready to face the true essence of her choice. The world twisted again, a sickening blend of reality and shadow, as Sarah stepped deeper into the maw of darkness. She felt it pulse around her, wrapping tighter, suffocating her with a sense of inevitability. The whispers intensified, growing louder, each voice begging, pleading, taunting. "You will pay, you will forsake," but there, just beyond the turmoil, caught in the web of despair and darkness, was Emily, her existence flickering like a dying ember. Sarah strained her eyes, fighting the shadows that clawed at her sanity. "I'm coming," she cried, the desperation in her voice a raw slice through the air. The tendrils wove through her reality, merciless and cruel, grabbing at her limbs, tugging her away from her purpose. "Join them, find your power," the figure cooed, a sickly sweet sound that lodged in her throat, bitter and rancid. "No," she slammed her mental fists against the chains binding her. "Focus on Emily." But even as she fought, the figure morphed, twisting into countless faceless children, their hollow chuckles reverberating like a sinister nursery rhyme, a chorus of fading youth. "You want to save her, but who will save you?" "Stop it!" Sarah shouted, darkness threatening to swallow her voice. The laughter rose, a cacophony of jeers, and the shadows surged forward to engulf her. It was now or never. She took a shuddering breath, her heart pounding with the weight of a mother's love. She had to push past the fear, past the darkness, and to Emily. Maybe she wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for her daughter's very soul. Gritting her teeth, Sarah leaped into the swarm, feeling cold fingers brush against her skin, dragging her down. But with a throaty yell, she pressed on. "Emily, I love you." Each word, a beacon when shadows threatened to extinguish the light. The darkness folded and roiled, an angry beast fighting against her will. But something deep within Sarah lit up. The unyielding bond of a mother's love surged, banishing the fear inch by inch. "I will find you," she screamed into the oppressive gloom. And suddenly, the laughter faltered, falling into an echoing silence, broken only by the pulse of her heartbeat. She seized the moment. The shadows shied away, revealing a flicker of light ahead, a sliver of hope. "Mommy?" The voice came, fragile and frightened, but filled with warmth. "Emily." Sarah's voice broke as she surged forward, cutting through the darkness like a knife. But just as she approached, the light dimmed, and Emily's figure twisted. No longer that familiar child she cherished, but a dark reflection of her fears. Eyes wide and empty stared back at her, lips curled into a sadistic smile. You should have listened. The world around her began to quake as the shadows screamed with rage, swirling and surging violently, closing in like an impending storm. "You are nothing without sacrifice," the figure hissed, flaring with dark energy that echoed through her bones. "I won't give you anything," Sarah spat, feeling the strength of her resolve shudder. But as the shadows wrapped tighter around her, she felt her heart twist in a way she never imagined possible. What if, to save Emily, she had to give in, to sacrifice herself? The thought clawed at her. She had opened her heart to darkness, but Emily was worth everything. Suddenly, a loud crack erupted through the silence. The shadows recoiled, a momentary weakness before surging with renewed wrath. A shape loomed in the aftermath, the figure she once thought she could control. Choose, or the darkness will choose for you. In that moment, Sarah felt her choice unraveling, the crushing weight of despair and sacrifice looming over her. Every second felt like an eternity as the shadows drew closer. Could she abandon her own desires and survive this harrowing labyrinth for the sake of her daughter? The darkness loomed, feverishly waiting for her answer. And as her breath quickened, she knew the next moment would change everything. What choice lay at the edge of her will? The ultimate sacrifice. The walls of the abyss trembled, whispering her fate, and Sarah could only hope she would emerge as a savior or a victim. Sarah's heart raced like a runaway train, each beat a reminder that time was slipping through her fingers. The shadows pressed in, sharp and cold, twisting around her like serpents, and with every breath, she tasted the heavy, oily dread that filled the air. She forced herself to look at the figure that mirrored Emily, writhing between the realms of nightmare and reality. "You chose this," the twisted reflection hissed, its smile widening. The laughter echoed all around, sinister and mocking, sending chills skittering down her spine. "You want to save her? But at what cost? Leave her alone," Sarah screamed, her voice splintering under the weight of the darkness. She could feel the shadows tightening around her, draining her energy, her will. But she wouldn't break. She couldn't. It was a fight not just for Emily but for everything she was, everything she believed in. The faceless children surged toward her, their shadows layered like a storm rolling in. They reached out with cold, bony fingers, brushing against her skin, and she felt their icy touch clawing at her very essence. "Join us, Sarah," they chanted, their voices rising in a ghostly choir. "Become one with the darkness." No. The word tore from her throat, a defiant roar. "I will not fall." With every ounce of strength left in her, she pushed back against the suffocating darkness, urging it to retreat, to give her space to breathe. She focused on Emily, bright blue eyes, laughter echoing in the air, the smell of honeysuckles in summer. Those memories anchored her in this twilight nightmare. If she could cling to them, maybe she could break free of this hell, fight off the evil attempting to swallow her whole. But the reflection twisted, morphing into scenarios filled with dread, replaying every moment where she had faltered as a mother. The times she let Emily stay alone too long. Episodes when fear held her back from fighting for her little girl. "You're not strong enough, Sarah." It sneered, the shadows thickening as the memories twisted. "You were never strong enough." With each agonizing flash, her heart clenched tighter. The choice loomed before her: give in and save herself or fight until her last breath for the child who needed her. The shadows were relentless, hammering at her resolve. "Mommy, help!" The tremulous call broke through the malevolence like a beacon, rupturing the darkness surrounding her. Emily's voice rang clear against the backdrop of terror. In that fragile plea, Sarah saw not just a reflection but a child, a soul worth any sacrifice. "Stay away," Sarah bellowed, driving herself forward, pushing against the torrent. The shadows bucked and roiled, a furious beast irritated by her determination. But then, the twisted reflection shifted again, not into something menacing but rather comforting. A vision of Emily safe, laughing, playing in a field surrounded by wildflowers, sunlight pouring over her. Sarah nearly fell into the trap. Was it truly a choice, or merely another guise of the darkness? "Choose!" the figure shrieked, and its breath was like the rancid stench of decay. "Choose now, or lose her forever." Panic clawed at Sarah's throat, a choking fear mixed with the oppressive weight of despair. She could barely think. The shadows closed in, whispering sweet promises and bitter lies. Was she too late to act? No. She had to fight. She had to believe in that flicker of love inside her heart, the kind of love that transcended the darkest void. "I will not give in," she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "Not to you." The darkness quaked at her defiance. A crack of light pierced through the veil, brighter than before, and amid the chaos, she began to sprint towards it, towards Emily's fading figure. But the shadows roared, and with a fury that shook her core, they reached out one last time, grasping her like a vice. Would she save her child, her only child, or was she destined to be captured in this void forever? Just then, as Sarah felt the darkness threatening to pull her back into its suffocating embrace, she caught sight of a figure through the haze, a silhouette that felt all too familiar. "Sarah?" It echoed softly, a name wrapped in uncertainty. The scream echoed in her mind as she grasped for that light. Was it truly hope or another cruel trick? "Emily!" Sarah shrieked, throwing herself toward the light, but the shadows clung tighter, resisting her escape. And as terror twisted within her, she faced the ultimate question. Would she lose everything to reclaim her one chance for salvation? As the figure grew clearer, so did the realization that the end may not be what she imagined. The light flared, blinding Sarah for an instant. But when it dimmed, she saw the silhouette more clearly. It wasn't just a figure. It was a woman. Her heart leaped, a mix of hope and confusion swirling within her. The familiar features sparked a rush of memories, both comforting and haunting. "Emily?" she whispered, but the figure shook its head slowly, the shadows playing tricks in the corners of Sarah's mind. "I'm not her," the woman said, her voice strained and echoing, each word like nails against a chalkboard. "I'm here to warn you." Fury mingled with disbelief. Why was this woman here? And why did she look so much like Emily? The ethereal glow glinted off her skin, making her seem almost alive, almost real. "Listen," the woman continued, urgency lacing her tone. "You can't trust the darkness. It lies." The shadows tightened around Sarah, constricting like a coiled snake. She felt the weight of despair pressing down, threatening to engulf her. "But she's in danger," Sarah cried, desperation clawing at her throat. "If I don't save her, you're here because you believe you can. But sacrifice will change you," the woman interrupted, her eyes suddenly filled with a wild fury. "You must know what you might lose. It's not just Emily." As the shadows inhaled, an ice-cold wind surged through the air, causing Sarah to tremble. The realization hit her a sinking dread. If Emily fell, Sarah could become a mere reflection, lost and forgotten, just another shadow. Can I even save her? Sarah felt the weight of the truth in her chest. Each heartbeat echoed with fear. The woman's face shifted, anguish etched into every feature. The choice you make will have consequences beyond your understanding. The darkness, it wants you to lose yourself, too. Something in Sarah's core twisted. Would she fight for Emily at her own expense, only to become lost within the same darkness? Could she risk her soul for the child she loved? No. She shouted back at the darkness, fueling her anger with her love. I will fight for her. The shadows wrapped around the figure of the woman, pulling her back into their grasp. Beware. Preys on your guilt. The woman shouted, her voice fading into a chilling howl. Wait. Sarah lunged forward, reaching out. But the darkness was relentless. It closed in tighter, dragging Sarah away from the light and from the familiar form. The woman twisted, dissipating into the wind, leaving Sarah with nothing but the taste of dust on her tongue and the darkness swirling around her. She could feel it creeping deeper into her mind, squeezing her thoughts. Memories flickered, moments of weakness, decisions that haunted her. The shadows fed on those feelings. You're unworthy, they whispered, 1,000 voices blending into a single, chilling refrain. You're just like us. Accept it. No, she screamed, clenching her fists, fighting against the despair. Each word slashed through her, clearer than the darkness threatening to consume her. Suddenly, a soft glow appeared at the edges, breaking through the tangled night. It wasn't too bright. It was more like a flicker, almost tentative. But it was there. Emily? The name came out barely as a whisper, full of doubt as she steadied herself. Sarah knew she had to press on, to reach the source of that light before it vanished entirely. Breathing deeply, she steeled her resolve. She could almost grasp it. She could feel a pull and instinct leading her through the chaos. But the shadows shimmered menacingly, rearing back, preparing to strike. What was waiting for her in the glow? Would that light bring her face to face with her daughter, or further darkness that would shatter what little hope remained? Sarah's heart raced, her desperation fueling a sense of impending doom. Threading through the thick haze, she took a step toward the light, steeling herself for whatever awaited. Sarah hesitated, poised between the chilling shadows and the soft warmth of that faint glimmer. Each pulse of light flickered like a heartbeat, calling her closer, an echo of Emily, a piece of home amid the nightmare. Emily! She cried again, desperation slicing through the darkness. The shadows relentlessly twisted around her ankles, a chilling reminder of what they wanted. They wanted her to give in, to become one of them, lost and forever wailing in despair. But she couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. As she took a shaky breath, the world around her warped and shifted. The laughter of the children faded, replaced with pleading cries. Mommy, that sweet voice, trembling yet filled with trust, rose from the ether, igniting a fierce determination within her. Where are you? Sarah choked out, fighting through the rising panic that threatened to take her. She pushed back against the impending darkness surrounding her, a dark wave crashing over her again and again, roaring its visceral hunger. And then she remembered. Memories cascaded through her thoughts like waves, moments of laughter, bedtime stories, sunshine, and wildflower gatherings. Emily smiling brightly, sweet and full of life. The thought anchored her, giving strength to her resolve. That spark was Emily. She had to protect that light. Together, Sarah shouted into the void, her voice ringing with defiance. The shadows quivered, recoiling as light seeped from her determination. They hissed, but she pressed forward, forcing herself into the radiance. The flicker surged around her, illuminating the way toward her daughter. Suddenly, the forest erupted with noise, shrieks, jeers, and evil laughter crescendoed into a cacophony. But amongst them, she heard it again, sweet and pleading. Mommy, please, I need you. With that plea driving her forward, Sarah lunged into the glow. The moment she crossed the threshold, the light engulfed her fully, its warmth enveloping her like a loving embrace. It was as if she stepped into summer after an endless winter. And there, crouched behind the shadows, stood Emily wide-eyed and trembling in her disheveled clothes, somehow still untouched by the dark malevolence surrounding them. The two locked gazes, a bridge of love connecting them despite the chaos. "Hold on, sweetheart. I'm coming," Sarah cried, overcoming the lingering shadows snarling around her. Emily stretched out her chubby little hands, and Sarah grasped them tightly, feeling that familiar warmth surge. It lit her heart with a ferocity that banished the whispers threatening her sanity. But the darkness surged back, a monstrous force clawing for them like an insatiable beast, screaming in fury at their escape. Shadows lashed and warped, intending to pull them apart, wrenched by the agony of losing inside a gaping void. "Trust me," Sarah shouted, her voice raising in urgency. "We're stronger together." Clinging to each other, they pushed through the oppressive force tightening around them, the weariness in their bodies forgotten in the face of love and protection. Together, echoed with a fierce resolve, the bond between them becoming armor against the grim reality, and one final rush against the deformed arms of darkness. Bursting forward, they threw themselves fully into the waiting light, and as that brilliance enveloped them, a shattering roar sounded. The darkness exploded with anger, recoiling as if stung. "Mommy!" Emily cried out, laughter bubbling amid the fear. "Hold on!" Sarah shouted once more, bolstered by the sound of her daughter's joy. And then, everything went quiet. A startling silence descended, the oppressive darkness evaporating into nothing. Sarah felt dizzy, disoriented, like waking from a nightmare to find that the world had changed. When her vision cleared, they were standing in a clearing, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by the vibrant hues of life. Wildflowers danced in the breeze, and the trees stood tall, free from the malice that had bound them before. "Mommy?" Emily looked up, eyes glistening with wonder, confusion still lingering. "What happened? Where are we?" Sarah knelt until she was eye to eye with her daughter. Relief washed over her, flooding away the fears and doubts that had clung to them. "We're safe now, sweetheart. Together we did it. We broke the curse." Tears sprang to her eyes as they embraced, the warmth of their connection solidifying the truth the darkness could break. But the light they held would always prevail. But amongst the beauty, she felt a twinge of sorrow for what lay behind them. The curses of Willow Creek were not easily forgotten, nor was the darkness fully vanquished. It always lurked on the edges of understanding, waiting. But for now, their love was a fortress against the night, a promise that darkness could never extinguish the light. As they turned to walk back toward the town, hand in hand beneath the azure sky, Sarah knew they were free, together facing whatever lay ahead. And as she gazed at her daughter, laughter spilling from their hearts, Sarah silently vowed never again would she let darkness linger. They would always stand firm, fighting the shadows with their love. This was the end of one story, but perhaps the beginning of another, one where togetherness is mightier than the shadows, and love finally conquers all. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss our next exclusive stories, they'll blow your mind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. We want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic ending. Together, let us spread the word.